All right, so some of the research that's been done on genetics has been interesting, and one of the best examples they can do is studying twins, right? So, um, figuring out with monozygotic twins, that is identical twins. So they say share the same genetic makeup. And this is where a lot of the twin studies have really looked at the nature-nurture debate, whether somebody's born criminal or born whatever way with tendencies to be more aggressive or bullying or whatever, compared to their peer or their twin. If they're both like, then they can make some assumptions there. If they're different, then it sort of throws this research on genetics quite a bit aside. So it's been mixed research in this area. So monozygotic twins, so identical twins, are more similar in self-reported criminality and deviance than fraternal twins, dizygotic twins. So there does seem to appear some sort of genetic link there. Okay. But again, how do you rule out parenting influences and that sort of stuff, right? So in adoption studies, children are more similar in criminality to their biological parents than they are to their adoptive parents. And that is where a lot of the research, genetic research in this area, tends to focus on, because that shows some sort of what's going on here, right? Why are they more like their adoptive parents or like their biological parents than they are like their adoptive parents? Um, so there are some methodological issues with those in how they've gone about the adoption studies, and just the studies have been problematic at times, and they've been heavily criticized. But there is some research out there that shows a bit of a link there. All right. So evolutionary views on crime. So aggression facilitates dominance over scarce resources, and this is how they explain aggression from an evolutionary perspective. This is this perspective that advocates survival of the fittest, those types of ideas, right? So being aggressive gives the person a better chance at reproducing, at survival, those sorts of things. And that's the perspective that it looks at. What are our basic instinctual drives, right? And that's the idea behind all evolutionary views, and applying it to crime. Evolutionary views just try to explain behavior in general ways, why we act the way we do. They don't isolate crime specifically. Again, we're back to this thing where they look at why are males more aggressive than females, those sorts of things, right? So they look at the gender differences in reproduction, encourages more aggression in males, right? To males, they try to explain that this is why males might be more promiscuous, although the research is very methodologically unsound in that area for the most part. Aggressive males tend to have a greater impact on the gene pool. There's been studies trying to show that. And then how they link it to crime is even on aggressive crimes like bullying, that it's just trying to show dominance over the other males. But they also look at things like jealousy over females, spousal abuse, control issues in relationships. They look at it from an evolutionary perspective, that these things are uh, somewhat biologically driven through our evolution, our basic instincts. So the evaluation of biological theories, and I'm sure by this point you guys have all figured out that some of these are just plain wrong, right? That these explanations can be accounted through other things, or they don't really look at the full spectrum of criminality. So, first point, are these theories racist? Yeah, in a lot of ways they are. Most of them. They tend to account as the norm being a white, Eurocentric, so European based norm of what is proper behavior, right? So, definitely, I would say that especially the earlier theories, but even later theories have racial elements towards them. So people looking at even things when we go into psychological positivism around IQ. The IQ test is made from a white Eurocentric sort of version of knowledge and then is applied to everybody. Well, it doesn't account for cultural norms. It doesn't account for different types of knowledge, all right, that aren't included in that baseline. Uh, Evaluation biological theories, they also focus on street crimes rather than business crimes, right? So they're only interested in crimes. One of the major criticisms is they're only interested in crimes of the poor. They focus more on impulsiveness and aggression, and those are linked to violence, street level violence, robbery, those sorts of things. It ignores, because you can't link impulsiveness and aggression to white collar crime, to crimes of the more affluent, right? It doesn't explain those well. Environmental crimes, it does not explain those well at all when we're just looking at a spectrum of impulsiveness and aggression. You ignore a lot of what is labeled crime in society, and you're labeling crimes that tend to be committed more by people who are more just disenfranchised in society as more criminal than other types of crime. How can they explain regional differences? And they don't. Well, why is it that the crime rate is different in the US from Canada if it's just down to basic biology, right? You would think that if we allowed a lot of US immigration where the crime rates are much higher than they are in Canada, that Canadian crime rates would then be thus influenced, that they would commit more crime when they came to Canada, and that just simply isn't the case. There's no explanation for that. Sorry about my phone. I'll just let it ring, go to the machine. Is criminal behavior a characteristic of a small select group rather than something done by everybody? So it ignores our chances of getting caught, right? There we go. Sorry about that. It ignores our chances of getting caught. Things like going over the speed limit, right? Genetics don't really tell us a lot about going over the speed limit. They can link it to maybe people that are arousal theory, so taking higher risks. But everybody sort of does it. So at what point is our legal definition not match a biological positivist version of what's labeled crime, right? And the empirical research has been very suspect in a lot of these studies. There are some links. The links aren't conclusive in a lot of these, but there tends to be minor links towards increases in criminality, right? Um, so the evaluation of biological positivist theories makes them quite suspect, right? There's a lot of ways of poking holes in them. A lot of these theories were done quite some time ago, and it was just people trying to fit science into a whole range of human behavior rather than crime itself. So a lot of these were done by biologists and not criminologists. All right, so we'll end it there and we will go into psychological positivism next.